density is something that we're going to be testing in the lab pretty soon. But the definition of density is that it's the ratio of the mass of an object to its volume. And so a density will tell you whether an object will float or sink compared to other substances. So we have this equation, density equals mass over volume. You can sometimes see that D for density equals M mass over V volume. We're going to use this equation specifically in our labs coming up. Okay, the mass units can be grams or kilograms, and the volume units can be cubic centimeters, so cm cubed, milliliters, or cubic meters. Density is what we call, it has a complex unit where it has something over something else, and that's because of the mass divided by the volume. They don't cancel each other out, the units. So some density unit examples could be grams per cubic centimeter, grams per milliliter, kilograms per meter, and the SI unit of density is kilograms per cubic meter. That's going to come into play later on, so don't forget it. Density is an intensive property. So the density of a substance will always be the same no matter how much you have, because it depends on what kind of substance it is. Okay, so for example, if we had a 10.0 cubic centimeter piece of zinc, and we can calculate the mass to be 71.33 grams, then we can calculate that density to be 7.133 grams per cubic centimeter. Anytime you have a sample of zinc, the density should calculate out to be 7.13 grams per cubic centimeter. So bringing in our chapter 2 ideals of intensive means that it depends on the kind of the substance. To solve for density, you have to have mass and volume. So in the lab situation, we are going to be measuring masses and we're going to be measuring volumes and then plugging them into the equation to find out what the density actually is. So how do you measure mass? Well, for solids, we do a direct form of measuring. So write down direct or directly, and we put it on the electronic balance that we learned about in our equipment quiz. The balance will tell us what the mass will be. Well, for liquids, it's indirect, because if I just poured the liquid out, it would go all over and the balance, and so then it wouldn't be an accurate measurement. So we do this indirectly by putting it in a container and then subtracting the mass of the container from the mass of both the liquid and the container to figure out just the liquid. For gas, it's the same way as our liquids, but it has to be an enclosed container. So it's indirectly, and it has to be in an enclosed container, or it has to have a lid so that you can do that subtraction, and so that you know that no gas is escaping through the top. So that's how we measure mass. We're going to be using a balance. That's what we do in chemistry. To measure the volume, there's a couple different things. A regular shaped solid would be like a block of wood or a sphere, something like that, regularly shaped. We can measure with a ruler or a meter stick or a tape measure and then use a formula from our measurements to figure out the volume for a regularly shaped solid. But something like a pen or a test tube or something that's solid but it's not really regularly shaped, and it's going to be kind of hard to identify and take measurements with a ruler or a meter stick. Those are what we call irregularly shaped solids. We do this indirectly by water displacement, where you put some water in a graduated cylinder and measure the volume, add the solid, and then subtract the difference between the volume at the end and the volume at the beginning, and that tells you the volume of the object. For liquids, how do we measure that volume? We do it directly, because we just read whatever the graduated cylinder says when we pour the liquid in. And then for gases, that is directly, because whatever the volume of the container that contains the gas, then we assume that is the volume of the gas, because we know that a gas fills the container. So That's all we've got. We're going to use this information in our density lab, so make sure you have your notes handy for that lab.